Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the United District podcast. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Ed Aarons, Deputy News Editor for The Guardian Sport. Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Hi there, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Thank you for coming on. I'm aware that it's a very busy time for everyone really, for everyone involved in football especially. The transfer window is in full flow now. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to do so. Which leads me quite well into our first question actually. How has this transfer window been as a journalist? Has it been different? Has it been any different from other windows in that, the window time has changed and we're living in very different times now where there's more factors considered into deals. How's this window been for you?
Yeah, it's been quite an odd one, really, just because everything's happening a lot later than it was before. So and it's been quite concentrated as well into a few weeks. And I think you're seeing at the moment, like there's a lot of stuff being confirmed, just because it's the season's just around the corner now. So a lot of clubs are looking to do that as quickly as possible. So I think it might calm down a little bit actually when once the season starts, because we've got till October for a lot of the later deals to be done. So it's very, very odd, but I think it's kind of obviously just everything's been moved back a few months by obviously the COVID problems and delay to the live games.
Well, just to ask you a general question quickly before we move into some more sort of United focused stuff. So far, obviously there's obviously quite a long time left in the window. Closes on October the 2nd, I believe. Am I right in saying that? It's early October anyway.
It's the 7th, I think. Yeah, 7th, and then you can still sign players from within the UK for another week, I think it is. I have to double check that, but something like that, yeah.
Right, okay, so this is quite a hard one to be fair, but which club do you think that stands out so far business-wise with the best business so far this summer?
I wouldn't say it's hard at all. I mean, until I don't know if it's best business, but the most standout, we'll have to wait and see whether it's good business or not. But Chelsea is the obvious one, isn't it? I mean, spent so much money. 6 players have come in more than 200 million. Havertz hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'm sure will be pretty soon. So it's a really eye-watering. The phrases are for eye-watering amount of money that they spent on players, and it's I'm not sure how much more there is to come, but I think there might be some more to come as well. So.
Moving on to United, obviously, you're a bit of an outsider in that you're not, we've had quite a few people on this podcast that are, intrinsically connected to United, whether that be as a fan or specifically reporting on United. Obviously, you've got a bit more of a sort of outside perspective on that. How do you see Manchester United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in terms of playing style and transfers? How do you sort of see that project, and do you think it's looking up for United at the moment?
Yeah, I have to say I've been impressed by him. I didn't think that he would, last this long. Certainly, I didn't think that he would really do much. I thought he was kind of just that he was kind of a panic almost from the board, because he did so well, obviously, when he was caretaker. But you have to give him a lot of credit for the way that he's kind of managed to, get the team playing really well. I know they fell short in 3 semi-finals last year, which was obviously not great, but to get into that position was good. Now I think he knows he's got to build on that, and it's a really crucial, summer close season transfer period for United, I think, because the foundation is starting to be there. I think there's some really good players at the club now, but to go to the next level, I think it's going to take a few additions.
And the first of those additions this summer, Donny van der Beek, is obviously the first deal that we've properly done. I know the Igalo loan extension, I think, counted as a deal for this summer, but Donny van der Beek, the first permanent signing. What are the details for that signing? Because as United fans, I think we were quite surprised in perhaps the speed that it was done. Obviously, we're perhaps aware that scouting and stuff was going on behind the scenes for months before. But how did that deal happen? Did it happen very quickly, or is this something that has been negotiated over a long period of time?
Well, I think in the end it was quite quick, because United been kind of determined to start getting some players in, having obviously well documented problems with Jadon Sancho.
Yeah,
and there's been a lot of interest from a lot of clubs in him, but with Real Madrid were pretty much nailed on to sign him before the COVID crisis, and then United have stolen the march in a way, I think. But he's a very good player. It's just my concern with that is where he's going to play with Fernandes and Pogba and him. it's good to have options. But in terms of the starting 11, I'm not sure where he will fit in there, but I'm sure that they've got a plan for him. So, and he's an excellent player as well. So, and it's a decent price as well for somebody who's, one of the key players from that Ajax team that got to the semi-final of the Champions League and was so good. And he's very versatile as well. Apparently, he's been playing quite a lot deeper this season for Ajax. So that might bode well for United. Perhaps he could be the sort of fulcrum of midfield that they kind of need. That might be the thinking. And if it is, that would be a top class three, wouldn't it, to compete with people? I'm just not sure whether he's got that. He's experienced enough there to do it as yet. We'll see.
No, I think you echo there the most of the positive things that us United fans are sort of thinking, as well as the scepticism about, where will he play. But I think we're so used to, a lack of squad depth last season. I think it was so blatant, Pereira and Lingard, those two depth options in midfield. I think it's a nice headache for us to have, to be honest, just to get him through the door, as you say, a good fee for him. So yeah, it's a positive thing, I think, with Van der Beek. So yeah, I think you're spot on with what you've said there. Moving on to a name that you did just slightly allude to. I knew, I think that his name was going to be mentioned on this podcast. Jadon Sancho, obviously the name that hangs over Manchester United. There's always a name, it seems, each summer. There seems to be a saga, and this year it's this one. Last month, the Guardian, with yourself, Jamie Jackson, Fabrizio Romano involved, it said that personal terms were already agreed. However, there's other sources now saying that the agent fees and the wages are actually a bit of a sticking point. What do you think about this whole, this sort of, don't want to say battle, but this sort of differing opinions on the problem with this transfer?
Well, I mean, everybody's got their own sources, haven't they? And that's the first thing to say in terms of journalism. But I think it's and with a transfer like this, it's always going to be very complicated. I think the idea that it was going to get done really quickly was there were signs that it could do at the start of the summer. The start of the transfer window when we had the stories, and it looked like it was about to get done. But obviously, the amount of money we're talking about and the situation that we're in at the moment makes things complicated, and so we're going to have to just wait and see. But I understand that there's still some dialogue going on, and whether it's official or not, but there's still a lot of interest from United's side, and I believe Sancho still would like to come to United, but whether it happens this year or not, we'll have to see, because time is kind of running out a little bit. I mean, I say that, but we've got to, as we said, we've got to it so October. But for a player like that, I'm sure that United would have wanted to have him already, for the pre-season, but unfortunately that's just not to be, and they may have to just be a bit more patient.
You talk there about, perhaps next year or another window being, the time when we go and get Sancho. Is that a suggestion that perhaps an alternative this window wouldn't be targeted?
I'm not sure, to be honest, but I think, they have, in terms of the team, it's not the most important position. I think maybe everybody sort of agrees in that, but it would make them formidable to have, talking about options in midfield, to have, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood and Sancho would just be formidable options. But just to have three of them, still really good, but it's not exactly where they want to be. They want to have some options. So perhaps it's one they could live without with just for another summer if it came to it. But obviously there is quite a big determination to try and get him this summer. So especially Solskjaer, I think he's very keen to. Because thinking back to United fans of a certain age, I've said this before on another podcast, but when United won the Champions League in '99, there was four players competing for two positions. Yeah. So having that squad depth, with Andy Cole, Dwight York, Teddy Sheringham, and Solskjaer himself. So and you saw the effect of that in the Champions League final against Bayern Munich when they brought Solskjaer and Sheringham on, and they scored the two goals that won the Champions League. So I think that's where he wants United to head to, in that kind of direction. So they've got lots of players in different positions. They're all pushing each other to start as well. And that's really where you need to be, I think, at the highest level. You need to have that kind of. I mean, people would say Liverpool may be the exception there because they've done it with pretty much the usual starting 11. But that's quite rare these days, especially with the amount of games that they play.
No, I completely agree. I think it's something that, as United fans, has frustrated us as well in past windows. Obviously, just across the city, we've got Manchester City making a massive amount of depth signings. Pep Guardiola signing 3 fullbacks in a window and things like that. So it's nice for us to be able to finally add some depth to our squad, and that's why the Van der Beek deal bodes well, and as does the Sancho one. Because if you sign a player for your starting 11, someone gets pushed to the bench, and then you obviously add quality there throughout the squad. Moving on to another position that we've apparently been targeting, centre-back. What's the situation with that? There's been mentions of Deo Upamecano. Those seem to be quickly shut down. Do you think United are targeting a centre-back this window?
Yeah, they're definitely interested in the centre-back. I think that's not really any secret. There's some interest in Gabriel, who went to Arsenal, and Upamecano as well. And there's a few good centre-backs on the market this summer. Obviously, Koulibaly would be the golden one, I suppose, but I think he's going to be too far out of the price range, with City kind of sniffing around him as well, looking at sort of 70 million. And I'm not sure whether that they want to go for him or not. So I think that that he has been linked to United in the past as well, hasn't he? But I think it's more of a younger player who's kind of fits the bill for what they want in terms of a centre back, someone with a bit of pace. But yeah, it's going to be. Again, time is running out for that, and I think that's probably the area that most United fans would say is most important to strengthen. I don't know, from some of the issues that there were last season, I think definitely need some support in that area.
Behind Jadon Sancho, do you think centre back is perhaps the most likely position for a signing to be made?
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah, just given that now they have a midfielder, which I thought would have been a priority as well, a midfielder. Not necessarily Van der Beek, someone like Van der Beek though. That's why I was a bit surprised by that, but I knew that there was a lot of interest in him. But yeah, I think a defender is kind of top of the agenda.
Yeah, I know what you mean with that midfield sort of thing there. To be honest, I thought the Declan Rice links would have increased with sort of Nemanja Matic's legs starting to perhaps decline. We all love Nemanja Matic. I think he's had a really good season, but in the next couple of seasons, if his legs are going to go, then we do need that replacement. And yeah, I know what you mean in that sense that Van der Beek obviously isn't that player. A lot more.
But I think Rice would have been really expensive. And I think a lot of people see him as a defender actually in the long term rather than a midfielder. But I think Van der Beek is kind of if he's going to play in that role, it could be really interesting to see because it'd be quite an expansive style of football if you had somebody like that. I mean, he's more adept at getting into the box and scoring goals, but has the ability to control the play as well, and Fernandes does as well. He can play a bit deeper too. Yeah. So it's three. Actually, all three of them are very versatile, aren't they? Because Pogba can play in quite a few positions as well. So it could be sort of a very very exciting midfield actually. Those three together with McTominay, with energy to throw in as well.
Yeah, and Fred always in the background as well.
Fred, who's improved a lot, hasn't he, since in the last year or so?
Yeah, for certain.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred's had a great season. With regards to another midfield, it's been, this is a bit of a strange link, to be honest. No one, I think, saw it coming. He seems to be Liverpool bound. Thiago Alcantara seems to be some interest from United side. Have you heard anything regarding that?
No, I haven't actually, to be honest. Just because he's on the market, everybody knows he's on the market. I'm sure that there's always going to be interest I'm sure that everybody's had a look because he's an amazing player. So, but I think it's just a matter of somebody paying the money actually, because Bayern have kind of are willing to let him go by the sounds of it. But I think that the Liverpool links aren't going away, and that's kind of we'll have to see on that. It might be one of those ones that gets done really late.
Yeah. I think it does seem like a strange one, to be honest. Obviously, I'd be absolutely buzzing to get him at Manchester United. Everyone knows his qualities. He's a top centre midfielder on his day. But yeah, he's not, as I say, he's not the Matic profile. We've already got, as you say, all those other options in midfield. So it'd be great to bring him in just to get him through the door. But yeah, how he'd fit in, etc., I'm not really sure. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that one. I'd be gutted if Liverpool got him, to be honest, because he doesn't. I'm not sure he really suits Liverpool's style. I know it might be a little bit controversial, but I think he's not the legs of Gini Wijnaldum or the sort of or Jordan Henderson, etc. He's a bit more pragmatic, isn't he? I'd say, but yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I think there's a lot of links with Wijnaldum going to Barcelona. So that might be why they're thinking of that as well.
Yeah, perhaps.
But it's also a really interesting relation to Keita, because I know that Liverpool are quite keen to give him more of a role next season. But that could be, if Thiago comes in, he's going to have a lot more competition.
Yeah. Well, it's terrible, isn't it? It's hearing Liverpool strengthen. They've obviously been quite quiet in the market so far, but Thiago, I think, sort of does. It's a massive improvement for them. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Another Spaniard that's been linked with United, Sergio Reguilon, the left back, the Real Madrid left back, obviously been on loan away at Sevilla. The Manchester Evening News have said he's being monitored. Is that true? Have United got an interest in strengthening the left back position?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's a top player. Obviously in the Europa League was superb. So I think that is an area of the team they're looking to strengthen as well. But it's just whether they have the money to do that this summer. Probably not. It's all very difficult to make too many more transfers. I think they've got to kind of concentrate on targets and kind of try and go for them now, really.
Mm. As United fans, we all sit back and we say, the Glazers, this is the biggest club in the world. We should be spending, you look at the figures, the turnover, etc., and say we should. Why is there a limit on our budget for the window? A lot of United fans are asking those sort of questions. What would you say? What would you say to those? Would you point towards the coronavirus actually having a massive impact on that?
Yeah, I think so, and that's what the club have been saying as well. That is the market has been affected by it. But I think the thing with Chelsea is quite interesting because it's putting pressure on other clubs, isn't it? I think to act, especially those, Chelsea United very level last season, in the league and looking to try and take the next step to challenge the top two. And if you compare the two, then the pressure is on. But then you've got to remember with Chelsea that they've had a transfer ban, so they're kind of making up for lost times.
Yeah.
At the moment, so you've got to balance it out with that. But yeah, it's a lot of teams making some moves, and I think the other thing about Chelsea to say is that they kind of they're setting the prices. The amount they're paying for players is setting the tone for the transfer market. Because there are clubs out there willing to spend, and that means that the other clubs have to fall into line with that. It's the market value of players is kind of being set by Chelsea in a way. It's interesting, and United, so United's fee for Sancho doesn't, it looks like a fair fee to what Dortmund are holding out for example, with Havertz's fee looking around sort of 90 million. It seems like that's probably fair enough what Dortmund are holding out for.
Yeah, it's a good comparison to make, to be fair, isn't it? Two Bundesliga clubs selling their top assets, to be honest, to the Premier League. So yeah, no, it's a good point to make, isn't it? Dortmund have got every right to hold out for the fee that they want, and if that is the sticking point, then we'll have to see whether or not United decide in the end to pay for it. I think as United fans, we sort of have come to expect these long sagas, and then in the end we end up just paying the money. I think that's perhaps the frustration. Do you think that could be the case where this runs all the way to the end, and then we end up perhaps in inverted commas panicking and pulling the trigger?
Well, possibly, but just because like you say, it has happened a few times, I think there might be a bit of a determination from United to not have that happen this time. Like to dig their heels in and say, no, we're not just going to do what you say, kind of thing, because it doesn't help them in future negotiations, I think, either. So yeah, it might be that one side has to soften a little bit, or they come up with a clever deal which defers the payment or something like that, or structures it in a different way. So, but you're right. The United do have the money to pay for players like this, but they're obviously wary of just paying exactly what everyone wants, because it makes it tough for them in future deals.
Yeah, it's the knock-on effect, really, isn't it? As you sort of alluded to there. Moving on to Harry Maguire. It's a very interesting situation at the minute. He's facing a retrial. It's United adamant to stand by their player. What's your opinion on Harry Maguire and specifically his captaincy? Should that be held on? And do you think this whole debacle is going to affect his game?
Well, about the captaincy, I think we've just got to he's got to keep it at the moment, because he's appealing, and so we have to wait and see what happens with that. And I think until that is resolved, then he would argue that he deserves to keep it. So I think he will, and they're going to have a chat about it this week supposedly, and I think he's going to keep it. But yeah, in terms of affecting his performances, hopefully not, because he's normally a model pro. but something like that is bound to have an effect on you. I think it's bound to have an effect. But he's a strong person, I'm sure, and hopefully he will try and get back to leading by example, as he has done pretty well at United so far
Mm.
on the pitch, anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, in terms of off the pitch, we don't know exactly what happens, so you have to reserve judgment, I think, a little bit until the full facts emerge.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I've said that quite a few times on Twitter. We it's hard for us to hold an opinion really on it, isn't it? Really, we don't know what happened. There's different stories. You have no right to believe one side or the other. To be honest, so it is a very tough thing to come around, and we'll see with the retrial obviously what happens there, and then if United decide to make a different decision based on that. Just going back onto transfers, we've heard a lot about sort of incomings as we always do. Players being linked left, right, and centre to United. What about outgoings? Because so far, we haven't seen much movement on that. Chris Smalling looks as if he might be off to Roma now. That deal a little bit closer to being done. Reportedly, is there any other players that we can expect to see leaving Manchester United this summer?
Yeah, I think there's a few that are likely to go. I mean, there's some interest in Dalot from Everton from early in the window. That we'll have to see whether that comes through or not. But there's a few others. I mean, Lingard's been linked with the move away, hasn't he, potentially? And Pereira.
Yep.
So we'll have to see on those ones. But yeah, there are a few players there that you probably think have had their time now, and it's be time to move on because it's quite a big squad now. I think there's not that much space. So they need to make a bit of space if they're going to sign anybody else, really.
And do you think, the departure of Chris Smalling to Roma, which, as I say, looks closer and closer, do you think once that happens, United will perhaps step up their bid to get another centre-half just to get the numbers back there again? Or, well, obviously, Smalling was loaned out last season, but do you think for the squad, do you think we'll step up those efforts to get a centre-half in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and apparently, sort of heard last night that Smalling is pretty close. It's not as much as that they thought they might get for it, though. Apparently, for him, it's more sort of about 14 million, I think. So it's not very much for him, but if it's the right move, I'm not sure how long has he got left in his contract, a year or so. So it's probably best for all parties.
Yeah.
I think that could be the trigger for them trying to get another centre back in.
Yeah, we'll have to see that in the next coming days if that happens. Just moving on to another general question. We asked this of your colleague Jamie Jackson quite a while ago of his sort of favourite moments working in journalism and football. We gave us some brilliant answers. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Ed. What are your sort of favourite moments since you've sort of worked in the business?
Oh, right, that's a good question.
I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I mean, it's quite. I have to say, I have a lot of interest in African football.
Right.
So I've written a book about the history of African players in English football, which came out earlier this year. And just a lot of my stories would come from that kind of covering that part of the game. So one of them would be in the 2010 World Cup. I was there for Uruguay v Ghana. The famous game when Luis Suarez handballed it on the line and everything. So yeah, that was a particular memory, and he ran out afterwards. In the mix zone after the game, he ran out like with his hand like shouting in Spanish, "I have the hand of God, I have the hand of God," and then running back like so. He really wasn't like trying to say sorry or anything like that. He was just sort of reveling in the fact that he cheated his way to the semi-final, but. That's not a best memory, but I always remember that moment. It was a really sad moment because the whole of Africa really was cheering for Ghana, and it was so close but so far. Otherwise, I'm trying to think about any other ones. There's some great moments, from being in those different Premier League grounds that you always really feel really lucky, privileged to be there as a journalist because people pay good money to go in, and I get to watch it for free. So just really, especially during the lockdown, we all felt very privileged to be able to go and watch matches.
Yeah, fair enough. We also asked of your colleague Jamie. He had some good stories about in press conferences, managers getting a little bit heated. He told us about Guardiola, asking him to look at him. He told us about, Mourinho, the three times rant that Jamie was on the end of. Have you got any memories in that sense of managers
Yeah,
getting heated?
I have one I always remember. Do you remember when Mourinho shouted at the physio?
Oh yes, yeah.
So after that, I was at that game and I watched that incident really closely. And after that game, sort of asked him, what was going on there. And I just remember how his reaction to that was just, he was like almost like crazy. His eyes were sort of bloodshot and stuff. And then I don't know we didn't really know what was going on at the time, but I think it was all to do with his dad had just died the day before.
Right.
And I think that might have been the reason that he was so like het up that day, because it was quite an unusual rant for him to do, and it was like obviously very unfair on the physio and the doctor, who eventually resigned over it. So yeah, most of my stuff is down in London though, so I go to see lots of I used to go and see Arsene Wenger for many years, and have the honour of being able to ask him questions and stuff. And that's a good thing about Wenger, is always listen to your question and answer it properly, whereas some managers aren't like that. But he was always a pleasure to work with, and a real honour again.
Yeah, interesting to hear. Just moving back on to Jose, it's the talk of the town at the minute, isn't it? Really, this new Spurs documentary that's come out. We've only seen the 3 episodes. I don't know if you've seen more than that with your position, but very interesting. What do you think of that series and Jose Mourinho, getting to see him sort of working behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? It's good to see. I've only actually watched the first one so far, so I haven't seen that much of Jose. With Pochettino and he left and everything. It's interesting. I mean, to be honest with you, I love documentaries of all kinds. Not just football, but of all kinds. And I've watched many over the years. And I have to say, these modern ones that have, the Amazon ones in particular, are very much. You're right. There's a bit of insight into it, and you see them, what they're saying to each other a little bit behind the scenes, but they're not, they're very, they're quite massaged, aren't they? And, they don't see the real, you feel like you don't really see the real things that are going on behind the scenes, just what they want you to see, which is, it's good in a way, but doesn't hold my interest as much as something like, if you've ever seen the Graham Taylor documentary from when he was England manager, from back in the 90s, something like that. It's just really, warts and all kind of access, in terms of that. And the Man City one was very similar. It was very sort of almost propaganda, if you like. But so I will watch it. I will watch the rest of it. But and Mourinho is fascinating. Whatever club he's at, and we'll see how it goes. It's kind of in the everyone's kind of intrigued to see how it's going to end up. I think with Mourinho and Spurs, because there's signs of both ways, really. It could go well or it could go badly. But I think, they're quite up against it this season, given what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Go back onto the documentaries. I haven't seen the Graham Taylor one that you're alluding to, but the Neil Warnock one, I think everyone's sort of aware of when he was at Sheffield United, produced some golden moments, that one. But
things like that. It's called The Impossible Job, the Graham Taylor one. I'm not sure if it's been on TV pretty recently, but it's from quite a long time back, and in 1993, I think. But and there's a few others around the football ones that have been really good. So and it's worth watching. It's always good. It's obviously the Sunderland Till I Die one was the best one that I can think of late. So it's on Netflix.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's good to see football getting this kind of treatment anyway, even if it's somewhat, sanitized.
Yeah. One of the favourite documentaries I was just going to say quickly that I've watched recently is, you've probably seen it, the Asif Kapadia Maradona film. Yeah. I found that just absolutely phenomenal. I think that was such a good documentary.
Yeah, he makes brilliant films. If you've seen the Amy,
yeah,
it's just fantastic. And Senna, I think he made as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think. But unfortunately, he's a Liverpool fan, so
Oh, is he? Oh.
He is, yeah, big Liverpool fan.
That is a shame.
So, but maybe not mention that.
Ed, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been great talking to you. I don't know if you've got any last words for the listeners before you depart.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and as I said, my book's called Made in Africa: The History African players in English football, and there is a bit of Man United, a bit of Quinton Fortune. Yeah, it's about lots of different players from down the years. But thank you very much for the time.
No, thank you. I'll have to give that a read as well. It sounds extremely interesting. I'll have to get my hands on that and get back to you with some feedback on it. It's been a pleasure.
Nice.
Thanks, Ed.
Cheers. Take care.